I know I'm an old school thinker, and I'm from the 90s, but guess what? The science doesn't change. Sorry about that, guys. Just because you guys have TikTok and we didn't have TikTok in the 90s doesn't mean that you know more than we do. I created Species Nutrition with one mission in mind: to provide bodybuilders and serious athletes with no-nonsense supplements that work. I put my name and reputation on every bottle of Species Nutrition products. If you want to be your absolute best, join the evolution.
Your thoughts on the new research out that your body can utilize 100 grams of whey protein post-workout? It has always been said that you couldn't.
Well, here's where I think people don't understand. First of all, these studies that do these things where they give a big bolus, 100-gram protein, they don't really tell you what else these people are eating. So a lot of times they don't eat anything else. They eat nothing. They work out. They'll give them 100 grams of protein and then they see what it does. Well, if you're protein starved, it's going to obviously use a lot more protein than if you're not protein starved. If you were eating every 3 hours and you get to your fifth meal of the day and you eat 100 grams of protein, will you absorb 100 grams of protein? 100%. You absorb everything you eat. Will you utilize the 100 grams of protein for building and repairing muscle? Absolutely not. Okay. Will the 400-pound strongman use 100 grams of protein? He might. He's going to use a lot more of it than the 120-pound woman would. So no matter how much protein you eat, you will absorb it. What your body does with it once it gets into the bloodstream is a different story. If your body needs it because you have an enormous amount of muscle mass on your body and you need a lot of protein to repair it, it will use a larger percentage. If you're smaller and you don't have as much muscle and all the muscle has enough amino acids already, and remember, your body can't store protein. There's no storage for protein. So what does it do? It converts it into carbs. It'll burn it up for energy. It'll do something with it, And so you always can absorb whatever you eat. It's whether you utilize it or not. So if you could always create a scenario whereby your body is protein deficient enough that, you're going to absorb a larger bolus amount and utilize it for building muscle. Or repairing muscle tissue or enzymes, hair, nails, skin. Remember, everything in the body uses protein to repair itself. So depending on the need for the body, that will dictate how much you use. But, would you rather eat, 6 small meals throughout the day so you assimilate those meals and use every ounce of that protein for building and repairing muscle? Or would you rather risk it and say, you know what, I'll just eat it all in the morning and hope that my body utilizes it the whole day? Well, I got news for you. By the end of the day, that protein is going to either be done and metabolized or turned into energy or gotten rid of, and you're going to have not enough protein later in the day. So the answer to the question is that the most efficient way to grow muscle, and we figured this out, Arnold figured it out, back before them, is to eat frequent small meals throughout the day of protein, throughout the day that you're awake. And not to go large stretches of time without it, and not to try to overeat protein because you missed a meal earlier. The worst thing you can do is miss a feeding because of the fact that your body can't store protein. It can store fat, save it for later. It can store glucose, carbs, as glycogen in the liver and the muscles and use it for later. Can't do that with protein. And that's why we must split up our meals and eat small, frequent meals. And that's the reality. You can create any kind of crazy concoct a study. It doesn't mean that that's a better way of doing things. But what do I know? I'm an old guy from the 80s. I haven't changed my theories in years.
Palumbo needs to update himself. Let's go to more on that later. Clint Istace or Istace. Apologies if I butchered the pronunciation. The most insane body part that you've ever seen was it Matarazzo's calves? Were there any bodybuilders who absolutely blew your mind when you met them in person in shape?
You know who had really freaky calves? Eric Fankhauser. I don't know if you remember Eric Fankhauser. He had the craziest, freakiest calves of all time, probably. But Dorian had some crazy calves, really crazy calves, believe it or not. You know, calves seem to be the thing that sticks out in a lot of people's minds of bodybuilders that just had ridiculous looking body parts. I mean, Platz had the greatest legs of all time, you know, and I say that, you know, crying because, you know, I know I had good legs. They were not as good as Tom Platz's. So there was guys with some seriously freaky arms. I mean, Ronnie Coleman had 24-inch arms. I mean, they were pretty impressive. Lee Priest has some fucking crazy ass arms. If you ever saw him in person, I'm talking when he was young, they were just outrageous. So there were people with crazy body parts over the years. I mean, Joel Stubbs had probably the best back of all time. It was like it's funny because he was an airline pilot. He looked like an airplane from behind. He had a bigger back than Ronnie did, but he had torn his quads like earlier in his life, so his legs were just never as good as his upper body. But he had the sickest back I've ever seen. It was crazy. I mean, Dorian's back in person was pretty outrageous too. I got to tell you, I saw him in the gym training, and the slabs of beef that was on that back is crazy. Kai Green's back is pretty absolutely wacky, over the top. Kai's glutes, as Bleckman would say, were pretty insane too. And Ronnie had some insane glutes when he was in shape. So there were a lot of people with freaky body parts, you know, over the years that I've seen. For some reason, everyone remembers calves. I don't know why. Calves just seem to be like this body part that sticks out, because I think a lot of people don't have them. Matarazzo's calves were freaky, but I think Eric Fankhauser's were better. And I think that Nasser had pretty good calves. Nasser got mad at me. I didn't know this. He was mad at me for about 6 months because I had told our friend Josh Friedman, who was friends with him, that when I saw Nasser, when I saw Nasser, I broke his balls. I said, "Do you put synthol in your calves?" Like, you know, he likes to ask like sarcastic questions like that to me. And he was insulted. But I didn't know he was insulted. He goes, no, these are my real calves. And so he told my friend Josh that he was mad at me. And I said, why is he mad at me? Because you told him, you asked him if he put synthol in his calves. I said, that's a compliment. If he doesn't put synthol in his calves, I said, then that was the best compliment he ever received. I said, and he forgave me for that. And then he didn't like something else I said, obviously. But the point is that he had some really big freaky calves. They weren't like long, but they came out. They were like fucking like about 6 inches wide. So there have been some impressive guys over the years.
Is there a way to mitigate hair loss with a DHT compound like Masteron or Primobolan if you're prone or not to male pattern baldness?
All right. You know, this is something Sid I was going to address in a separate video, and I probably will anyway, because some moron, one of these internet morons out there that think they know more than everything. And whenever anyone puts me down, because I don't really put anyone down really out there, whenever someone puts down my knowledge base, I mean, you're pretty stupid to do that, because I think I'm pretty much established myself as being pretty knowledgeable in nutrition, diet, supplements, performance enhancing drugs. I mean, I don't think there's many people that would say I don't know what I'm talking about. You know what I mean? And if they are, they're morons. Okay, I know what I'm good at. I know what I'm not good at. Okay, I'm not good at fixing cars. Okay, I'm not going to try to pretend that I can go out and fix a car, because that's not what I do. But I know what I'm good at, and the reason I'm good at is that, and why I'm still good at it, is because I do it on a daily basis, every single day. I don't stop. And you know, drugs, we call them DHT drugs. I don't know why we call them that, but they're similar in structure to DHT. And I talked to Patrick Arnold about this the other day, and that's why I'm going to give you his read, because Patrick Arnold is a chemist, and he knows, you know, everything there is to know about steroidal compounds. The guy's a genius. Drugs like Primobolan and Winstrol, Masteron, these are drugs that have a similar structure to DHT. They're not DHT. They don't act like DHT. DHT, pure DHT, has an effect on the body to cause hair loss, acne in people who are prone to it, prostate enlargement. Okay, when you're an adult. When you're a kid, it's responsible for developing the secondary sex characteristics of a man. Strong jaw, you know, the growth of the penis, all those things. And that's why when women take drugs that have a lot of DHT in them, they can get this all the secondary sex characteristics of a man. They can get hair, facial hair, their jaw can grow, their clipped can grow. All these things that they get because it's a side effect of DHT. Now, just because Winstrol and Primabol and Masteron are similar in structure to DHT, their androgenic component, meaning the masculinizing component of that drug, is greatly reduced, because what they've done is they've tried to get rid of the androgenic component and have a higher percentage of anabolic component, meaning muscle building. And that's why they did it. Now, Anavar, they essentially stripped away all of the androgenic component of it, and it only has an anabolic component, so you get no side effects from it, okay? Zero. And women can take it. It doesn't affect their voice. It doesn't do anything to them, because they've also, when they reduce the androgenic component of a drug, they also remove some of the anabolic or muscle building qualities. So Anavar, while it's purely anabolic, it is the weakest anabolic, but it doesn't have any androgenic side effects. So it's really good for women to take. Likewise, Primabol and Winstrol are not that strong, anabolically speaking, but they have very, very little androgenic component. And that's why I tell people they don't cause hair loss. They don't cause a male secondary sex characteristics. People have it in their head. It's DHT. It's the same thing. It's not. It's not. I know, and I know I'm an old school thinker, and I'm from the 90s. But guess what? The science doesn't change. Sorry about that, guys. Just because you guys have TikTok and we didn't have TikTok in the 90s doesn't mean that you know more than we do. Science is the science. If you want to come on and debate it, we can debate it all you want. I don't care. I'm willing to do it. The science. I'll bring on Patrick Arnold. You can bring on your TikTok companion, and we'll have a nice debate about it. I have no problem doing that. And that's the reason why. So if you take Primabol and Winstrol, you're not going to lose hair, okay? Any more than, okay? Now, if you take testosterone, you see, this is what people do. They're on testosterone, and they stack it with Primo and Winstrol. They're like, oh, I got all this hair loss from the Primo and the Winstrol. Well, don't you think it's from the testosterone? Because we know that testosterone converts to DHT. And DHT is the strongest drug, or the strongest hormone, to cause hair loss, to cause prostate enlargement, to cause acne. So why would you blame the Primabol and the Winstrol when you're taking testosterone at the same time? And that's the reason why I said when I first did my first cycle of Primabol and Winstrol, I got no side effects from it. I didn't even get much suppression of my testosterone. I got blood work right after I finished the cycle, and I was still producing testosterone, which obviously meant that I wasn't suppressing, because those compounds don't convert to estrogen. Estrogen is what suppresses your own endogenous testosterone production. So take it for what it's made. I know I'm only an idiot, but that's the science. Sorry, guys.